I just had to get these thoughts out. I finally ended up writing out my thoughts about what the heck is going on, money, what is freedom. So many things going on as far as people can't even agree on what the word freedom means anymore, or what the word democracy means, or what the word independence and liberal, and so many confusing things. And I think so much of this is rooted into the issue of money, and why I think that is. And it's not about money. That's actually the problem with this. It's not about money, but when we don't have sound money, then it actually is the root problem. And I think money is this weird thing. Like there's this story I heard. I don't even know where it came from, but there's two fish swimming in the ocean, and one looks at the other and says, how's the water today? And the other fish looks at the fish and says, what do you mean? What's water? And I think that's what money is. We're like, we shouldn't have to think about it, but when we don't know about it, it could be toxic. It could mean it's really the lifeblood, and it's how we survive and exchange value and goods and services and really exchange trust. But if we don't understand it, and we don't understand that it exists, we don't know whether it's good or bad, and then it could become the root problem, but we have to see it first. So I'm just going to read my thoughts here because I just, so Allegory of the Cave, the red pill, and the Matrix are both ways of explaining a situation where one sees the real reality while the other ones are plugged in or blind to what the reality is, kind of like that fish story I was just talking about. I'm really starting to understand what that means now because the political environment in the US is heating up. There is division between people like none in my lifetime, and people can't agree on what true is, let alone what the fundamental problems are that need to be solved. All this is a byproduct, I believe, of unsound money, power accumulating at the top, which is just closest to the source of money, creating the money printing, where people don't have to exert time or energy to provide value to others to earn the money. So I think about the story I just told Everly and Zoe is, we were riding in the car and we drove by US Bank, and I was like, fake money. And Megan's like, stop it. And Everly's like, what'd you say? And Megan goes, bank money. And Everly goes, I think he said fake money. I'm like, that's what I said, because with twins, the constant thing is what is fair. And we know we've got these chores going on where they can earn up to $12 if they're cleaning, the floors, or they're, doing the bathrooms. And I said, Everly, would it be fair if you had to work all day to get the $12 and Zoe got to print it and didn't have to work? And she's like, no. I was like, you get it, right? We're like, if Zoe was able to do that, she would be stealing your time because you had to do all of that for the same amount of money. And so if we have this fake source of money, it's effectively people stealing our time. And so I think that this the problems are because this unsound money, all this is a byproduct of this unsound money, which starts when we start printing or creating money that was not earned. And power accumulates at the top, where it's closest to that source of the accumulate or the creation of money and the printing of unsound money, and where people don't have to do things to earn it. And the closer to the source, the more of the disproportionate share of the wealth goes to those people. So if you think about it, you're just kind of I've got this vision of people just accumulating towards this like source of new money. And instead of having to create value and spend time, they're spending their time focused on how to get there so they don't have to do things that they don't do, hard things to provide value. So the closer people get to that money source, the more wealth they accumulate that the world did not have to determine was valuable. They just had to essentially get close to the money creation. They didn't have to provide value that the world said, hey, what you did and how you spent your time was valuable, so here's an exchange. So they are spending their time trying to get to the source instead of trying to create value for others, and actually where society is saying, hey, by the way, another human being to another human said, I like how you spent your time. I'm willing to give you some sort of exchange for what you did with your time and energy. So the closer to the source of the money, the more wealth people can accumulate without having to do anything, and how the policy decisions direct that fake money. So people are trying to get to the point where they're getting the runoffs of that fake money. So they're doing whatever they can to get to that source. And the system is rewarding the people and the lack of values that they generally have to do whatever means necessary to get to as close to the money source as possible. These people and values, and really honestly, it's a lack of values, would not generally be rewarded by society if there was sound money. These people would have to behave and provide value to earn their money, and acting the way they do most likely wouldn't be rewarded in general society because we would just not exchange value with them. We would not provide any money to these people if we did not like their behavior, if we didn't think what they were doing or creating was valuable. We just wouldn't reward them. But instead of them having to be reconciling with that situation, they're spending their time driving or they're spending time trying to get as close to that money source because it's easier to have a lack of values, and the narcissistic Machiavellian type or whatever the wrong behaviors are rewarded by the money printing, because these people would have to behave otherwise. Otherwise, people would be like, nope, don't think that what you're doing is appropriate, so we're not going to exchange value with you. And so the bad values and thinking accumulates around the money source, and then they try to convince the people that this is normal through whatever propaganda medium is relevant in the day. So the medium is the message, is something that's been said. So as people then accumulate around that money source, they're obviously going to protect the position that they have of the directing of the money source instead of having to go hard work to provide value to others. So they're going to start to propagate whatever message they need to say, hey, this is normal. So the bad actors at the top wrap their missions in false truths like saving democracy, or this is something that's wild. France is the Committee for Public Safety murdered more people in the spirit of public safety. I think nationalism or diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of these different missions, actually there's so much hypocrisy layered into it. But what I find so difficult to discuss with other people is there's fundamental truths in it. Like, of course we want to provide safety for our nation. Of course we want to have freedom. Of course we want to have diversity and equity, but like, at what extent? And so there's this like underlying truth, but it's wrapped into this essentially tyrannical control that the people closer to the money printer and money creation want to propagate, so that way they can then essentially stay up there so they don't have to do hard work. And when in reality, all that's happening is the policymakers, generally funded by other bad actors in various influential parts of society, whether it's business, education, health, energy, food, all of those lobbyists are now trying to then go to these policymakers to get the money, because no one's having to do the right things and provide value to others, because the name of the game is get as close to the money printer and money creation as possible. I mean, a wild stat that I heard this last week is in the last 4 years, almost 100% of the job creation has been government funded. And if you were to take the government spending outside of the GDP, we're negative. And there was another stat that 30% of jobs in America are tied to the money printer, essentially government spending. And if that's it, not only direct, so that includes direct government workers, but also, like people that are concrete, makers or whatever it is, that they're providing roads to government spending. So it's the companies who get the government contracts. So everybody's trying to accumulate up to the top instead of waking up and saying, what does everybody else value? What should I be doing today that other human beings value? We're trying to get to the money creation instead. And then therefore the lobbyists all accumulate around there, and then the lobbyists then put the super PACs in both the DNC and the RNC. It's just so gross. The influential sectors are essentially trying to redirect some of the money to their interests instead of society providing the funds by determining that their value is real by giving them sound money for their good services they provide. So instead of the world being the judge and other human beings, the printer, and their ability to lobby their way up to the printing to then convince the policymakers to get the money. I believe that this is a slippery slope that starts with good intentions. I mean, all roads to hell are paved with good intentions. And I'm just starting to understand so many of these phrases that are sound true. So like, oh, this makes so much sense now. Because I think everything starts with good intentions. Every time in history, it started with an idea like, hey, let's just increase the money supply to do a good thing. Hey, we want to help someone. We want to, whatever it is. I think it starts with good intentions. Like, hey, we want to, the Bitcoin Standard is a book I got done reading, and out of the 11 hours of listening, the first 8 hours are about money. It's a lot about this stuff. And then it's like, hey, by the way, here's how this new money system works and how it potentially could solve a lot of these problems. Austrian economics talks about just sound money. It's not necessarily gold. It's not necessarily Bitcoin. We just have to get sound money because of all the problems we're talking about here. And I think it starts with good intentions, with someone saying, hey, I want to help out. But then the moment that happens, you're opening up the doors to saying, oh, so we can get something for nothing, going back to Everly and Zoe. So someone can get money without having to do time and work. Okay, well, how does that happen? Who's making those decisions? And then now you're opening up these floodgates where I think then every time that happens, it starts with that idea. The moment that this happens, the bad actors smell the blood in the water and they're like, oh, I don't have to do hard work. And right now my behaviors are not being rewarded. So I'm going to go then spend my time trying to figure out where the money source is and how to get control over that money source that took something and made it and took nothing and made it into something instead of the world saying it was worthy. And so those bad actors focus their actions on getting into policy to control the creation and flow of money. The creation of money. Then good people have to bow down to the policymakers to get their funding. So next thing you know, the schools, or whether it's healthcare, or if it's pharma or whatever. Every industry is relying on this fake money printing now because they need the money. Schools need money, but we have to have this ability to determine, well, what does the world value, instead of what happens when this happens is then all of a sudden the policymakers and all these people are now just sitting around this money source. And then there's the general population, which is, I just am in the middle of the book, Road to Serfdom. That's next thing you know, normal people are just sitting below going, what is going on at the top? And normal good people don't want to deal with this disgusting stuff. I can't even talk to my wife, Megan, about it because she just is like, I just want to live my life. And people with good values don't want to participate in the barbaric, lack of morals that is needed to get to the top, to get something for nothing. And yeah, so normal good people don't usually want to deal with this, and it's really disgusting. And I didn't want to get into private equity or hard money lending or any of this stuff because it's like, that's just gross. You're extracting money from people instead of helping people. And I think that's been the biggest challenge I've had, is I want to make money feeling good by providing value to others. And I think a lot of people do too. So good people stay away from this stuff, and then you don't get rewarded because you're not tied to the money printing and the policies or the politics or all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, it's the road to serfdom, where all of a sudden these people, where the money printing is stealing our time, because every time they hit Control P and print, they're inflating the time. So they got something for nothing while everybody else is trying to work hard. And if we have a savings of $100,000 and the denomination is infinity, we're getting further behind every single day. And I have this vision of there's this wave, and I've been sitting out in the ocean and waiting for the big wave, and next thing you know, I feel like the big wave's here, but then I kind of miss it, and I'm just frantically paddling, trying to catch the wave, but I'm always behind. And that is essentially the money supply growth, is we're constantly behind, and we're never actually floating and surfing with ease, because there's this constant trying to catch up, because the money printing is happening and people are stealing our time, where everybody that's not associated with that disgusting game is just falling further behind. And I think by the time this situation is recognized by the good people that at the bottom, it's all of this propaganda is wrapped up into this is normal. It's this is not normal, but it's wrapped up into this propaganda that is either fascism, where there's just a dictator that's trying to figure out how to, it's for our nation, it's for this class of people or whatever it is, or it's socialism, like everybody can be fine, but like that's a slippery slope, or it's communism, where there is no one that can outperform because outperformers are leaving other people behind. All of that is tyranny. That is not liberty and individualism where people can succeed based on their own merits. So all of them are like roughly, I mean, so similar. And I read this in the Road to Surfing. They were talking about how the Nazis actually used to go recruit from communists and socialism because it was easier, because they at least all understood that individual liberty was bad. So like they're all the same. Like I don't want anybody telling me what to do. So like I don't want any of those. And that's what, I'm really terrified of these days. And I think the challenge is that all of those are tyrannies that are protecting the group or party who have captured the money source. So like whatever they're saying, it's just like, oh, in the spirit of public safety or diversity or national security or whatever. It's like, how about we get rid of the money printing and like people have to wake up and do value and hard work for others so that everybody can, it's the sound money is the root of all this. And it's only when life gets too bad for the general population will people wake up and take the red pill or leave the cave. And this conversation has been very difficult for me with a lot of people because it's like, how's the water today? People go, what do you mean? What water? And it's very difficult to have this conversation. So I'm hoping this video is an entry point for some people. And I think I'm pretty concerned about it, to be honest, coming up in November, whatever the hell happens. I don't see any outcome where there's not more money printing on either side. We got a demographic cliff happening. So there's going to be less revenue, more spending, more debasement, more control. And Animal Farm is a book that is ringing true in my head right now, which sucks. And I think that we're at the tail end of this awakening that we're the general population and be like, this sucks. It's not okay for us because we're getting further and far behind that wave. And people are going to wake up, but there's not going to be any agreement on what truth is and what the problem is. And if we can't agree on what the truth is and what the problem is, then there's just going to be a bunch of infighting, people arguing, instead of realizing that, like, hey, we need to walk out of the cave. We need to take the red pill. There's zeros and ones. There is no spoon. Okay, so if we can realize that, and we realize that, like, regardless of whether it's communism, socialism, or fascism, like, it's all tied to this getting something for nothing because people are printing money and increasing the money supply without doing anything. And I'm really concerned about this for my daughters and for our generation and for the next generation, because we don't have, it's not that we can't fix it. It's that we don't have any agreement on what reality is and what the truth is. So we all need to take the red pill and leave the cave in order to figure out how to fix this shit.